Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. So let's just jump right into it. Great.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. We are going to have yet another great late night conversation. So we're going to follow our usual format. The way this works is I give my opening remarks, which are then followed by the roll call, which are then followed by me answering your questions for the remainder of the night. So if there's something you would like me to touch on in the second half of the show, all you need to do is send me a Rumble rant. Questions can be sent via Rumble rants on Rumble, or you can cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. Those are the two ways that questions can be received. Hopefully we're remonetized on YouTube soon. I'll be applying for that as soon as possible. But yes, questions can be sent via Rumble rant, or they can be cash apped to me. Those are the two ways we are receiving questions for the second half of the show. Two big announcements. First of all, this weekend, I am headed to Los Angeles. We are having a workshop. Tomorrow night, we'll have Dan from LA come on the show. He'll be talking about what it's like. The preparations are going very well. I'm getting good news about the different people that are planning to come, and I'm very excited. It's going to be a fun weekend for me. I don't get out to Los Angeles very often. But it's going to be good. It's going to be really, really good. And then, of course, our big announcement is the National Convention of the Center for Political Innovation, which is coming up on July 12th. July 12th is the big day in Chicago, and we need everyone there. Please come. If there is one event you come to this year, make it this event. We need you in Chicago. This is going to be the biggest thing the Center for Political Innovation has ever done by leaps and bounds. Just trying to figure out, it looks like we have one really important speaker lined up, booked her flight last week. Looks like we have another great speaker coming lined up, and we're working on a very, very important speaking guest, fingers crossed. And yeah, every day I've got people to call, and, the Houthi book, we have a special edition of our book about Yemen. With the poster of the convention on the back, and door hanger flyers are going on doors, and we're talking to different communities, and very, very exciting. If you're in the Chicago area and you need transportation, we are providing transportation. That's one of the ways we're going to make sure we fill up the auditorium. So if you're in the Chicago area, or if you're anywhere and you're planning to come, register down below. We got a whole team of people coming to town to make the event very special. It's going to be a really, really important gathering. So I really hope to see you there in Chicago. If I don't see you in LA this weekend, I will see you in Chicago. Great things are happening. Following our usual format tonight, opening remarks, followed by the roll call. And then I answer your questions in the second half of the show. Questions can be sent via Rumble rants on the Rumble, or you can cash app me at Caleb Maupin 22. So think of questions here during the first half of the show. Give me something to talk about in the second half. So today is May 19th, and this is a very, very important day for anti-imperialists for a number of reasons. The primary reason is because May 19th is the birthday of Malcolm X, the great anti-imperialist black nationalist activist in the United States. It's also the birthday of Ho Chi Minh, the founder of the anti-imperialist struggle, the the George Washington, the national liberation hero of Vietnam. Both of them have their birthday today. There was a left adventurous terrorist group in the 1980s called the May 19th Communist Organization because they were in honor of May 19th because that day is so important. Ho Chi Minh, the Vietnamese liberation struggle. Today is also the anniversary of the death of the Iranian president Ibrahim Raisi. So we're going to talk about that, obviously. I have had the honor of interviewing Ibrahim Raisi. We're going to show that interview here on the stream tonight. So obviously, I just want to give a homage to the day of the month, right? This is the day. May 19th is certainly an important day for anti-imperialists, for people around the world that are interested in the struggle against globalism, imperialism, etc. But there's also been a huge development today, which I'm feeling great about. I don't know if you saw, but there was a 2-hour phone call between Donald Trump, president of the United States, and Vladimir Putin, president of Russia. And both of them spoke on the phone for over 2 hours. And it was considered to be a very productive conversation. Both parties reflected positively on the phone call. Donald Trump says the Istanbul negotiations will proceed toward a ceasefire. And at that point, we will then see an end to the war. And then Russia will invest millions of dollars into the U.S. economy and create millions of jobs. Now, that sounds awesome to me. I am very, very happy, very, very happy to see that development. And, Donald Trump, he gave his press conference afterwards, and the press asked him very stupid questions. One of the questions the press asked is, well, how can you think Putin wants peace? He just attacked Ukraine. And he said, they're in a war. There's a war going on. They're attacking each other. Like, there's no ceasefire yet. So, and Donald Trump just completely shot that down. And they said to Trump, why haven't you put more sanctions on Russia? And he gave an answer to the effect of, because we're trying to de-escalate. We're trying to negotiate an end to the war. I am so tired of seeing U.S. mainstream media act as the war lobby, right? It's like a scandal if our leaders are not war hawks and if they're not going after and being hostile. And this wasn't just true for Trump. It's not just that they hate Trump. They did this to Biden, too. When Biden met with Russian President Putin, the response was the same. It was, are you being hard enough on him? Are you escalating enough? When all the polls show the American people want peace. The mainstream media is not acting as the voice of the American people, asking the questions we want to hear. The mainstream media is acting as the voice of the American intelligence agencies. Yes, mainstream U.S. media is state media. It drives me crazy. They say, RT, well, that's state media. Well, they receive some funding, but they're a private corporation that receives funding. But mainstream media like CNN is basically directed by the intelligence agencies in order to get the information and the cooperation of the American government. And it's so blatant. It is so blatant. Anderson Cooper admitted to the Washington Post the way he got his job at CNN was by working for the CIA. He admitted that, right? It was just a fact. And he's from one of the richest families in the country anyhow, the Vanderbilts. On top of that, in addition to that, you look at MSNBC. Who owns MSNBC? MSNBC is literally owned by General Electric, which is one of the top military contractors, one of the biggest, monopolistic corporations in the United States. Rachel Maddow filmed her show in which she would rant against big oil like the Koch brothers. She filmed her show at Rockefeller Center. Oh my goodness, right? She opposes big oil, opposing the Koch brothers, who were kind of small fry compared to the people who own the building she's in, Rockefeller Center. It's so absolutely ridiculous. And Fox News, that's News Corporation. That's Rupert Murdoch from Australia. I'm Rupert Murdoch, the Zionist, right? I like Israel, and I don't like I don't like Arabs and Palestinians, even though I let Saudi Arabia become a shareholder in my corporation. See? I'm Rupert Murdoch. I like to have really good-looking news anchor women who have cleavage on the TV, right? And right-wing conservative guys love to watch women with their cleavage. It's really entertaining, and they watch women with their cleavage, and then we do stories about why we don't like Muslims and immigrants. See, that's a really good model. I used to do newspapers in England that had naked women inside of them, the Page Six girls, right, topless women, and then now I do Fox News and Sky News, and that's why people watch me shows. They got lots of good-looking women talking about not liking Muslims and immigrants. See, I'm Rupert Murdoch, and I don't like China. I don't like China either. I'm Rupert Murdoch. I'm a Zionist. See. But yeah, that's mainstream media in the United States, but that's independent and free, right? Even though it's lobbying our politicians to be more warlike, more hawkish. Meanwhile, at the same time, the American people want peace. We want peace overwhelmingly, and that is not what our leaders demand. And Donald Trump, honestly, Trump's administration has been mixed, but today, the idea that he might lift lots of sanctions on Russia, that Russia would invest millions of dollars in the United States, that this war can end, I'm down with that. I think this was a great day. I just want to see it fulfilled, right? And that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of buzz in anti-imperialist media that this is insincere, etc. Well, maybe it is, but we got to try. It's not our job to just sit back and say, oh, it's insincere. Our job is to try our hardest. And the American people, all the polls show that they don't want our tax dollars going to Ukraine. They want to get along with Russia and have a good relationship with Russia and all countries. In addition to that, Russia certainly wants to negotiate and end this conflict. And if Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin could have a 2-hour phone call, that they both come out of it feeling optimistic, and we got the peace talks going on in Istanbul, and it's like, bring it, end this war. I am really hoping that the conflict in Ukraine can be ended. Now, Zelensky, Donald Trump admitted, I don't know if you saw, but he actually admitted in his press conference that Zelensky is not easy to work with. That was quite important. But Zelensky is saying, oh, no, we will never withdraw our troops from the new republics that voted to join with Russia. I don't know what's going to happen. But, we've got to just hope for peace. We have got to just hope for peace. A couple other developments I wanted to touch on. So Russia at this point has condemned Amnesty International, and good for them, because Amnesty International is one of these NGOs that is facilitated by the United Nations, and they make propaganda against anti-imperialist countries, and they cover themselves by occasionally talking about the bad things that the U.S. government does, that Israel does. Right. And it's a way to protect themselves. Look, we're totally unbiased. See, we criticize both sides. But Amnesty International, this liberal nonprofit, Amnesty International is notorious for repeating unsubstantiated claims against countries. For example, I remember I used to be based at the UN, and there would be busloads of high school kids from Amnesty International clubs at high schools. You know this? American high schools, that's an activity, right? If you're a smart, high-achieving kid, right? They didn't have it. They didn't have an Amnesty International club in my little town in Orrville, Ohio, right? We had the football team, and they actually had a soccer team just so they could be in a certain league, but they didn't even really have enough players for their soccer team. It was a whole nother thing. But they did not have an Amnesty International club at my high school. We didn't have a debate team. We didn't have a lot of that. But if you go to a nice suburban high school and you're a high-achieving athletic kid, you're a nerd rather than an athlete or whatever. You're one of those kids that gets good grades, or their parents are wanting them to be a high-achieving person. You can join an Amnesty International club at your high school. So I remember being at the United Nations, and a high school bus pulls up in front of the United Nations. All these high school kids get out of the bus, and they're wearing T-shirts And do you know what their t-shirts said? Free North Korea. I kid you not. All these high school kids sponsored by the American government from their Amnesty International club. And you'd think, right, Amnesty International criticizes both sides. They have, stop torturing people, shut down Guantanamo Bay, all these other things that Amnesty International stands for. But no, all these high school kids are getting off the bus with free North Korea t-shirts. So then you go look at Amnesty International, and what have they published about North Korea? Well, they published all kinds of awful things about North Korea, right? But they're all research done in South Korea. Now, the people that provide Amnesty International their information about North Korea are all people in South Korea. Well, folks, have you ever heard of the National Security Law? The National Security Law of South Korea says that it is illegal, it is a serious crime to ever say anything good about North Korea. And in fact, Amnesty International itself denounces the National Security Law of South Korea. Well, go and read about it. So Amnesty International itself admits that South Korea has a law that says if you say anything good about North Korea, you can go to jail for 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. There was a young man in North Korea who retweeted Kim Jong-il in 2014, and he got a 2-year prison sentence for doing it, for retweeting Kim Jong-il. That's how crazy they are with this national security law. But yet Amnesty International has called out and they said, oh yeah, this is totally unfair. It makes it illegal to say anything that goes against, might be sympathetic to the North. But yet all the people they interview about North Korea are all people in South Korea. So all of those interviews are under duress, right? If they were to interview any of those people and they said, it wasn't so bad, they would go to jail immediately, right? Interviewing people in North Korea who have fled to South Korea. And that's not an unbiased. They're not going to tell you the truth because they're not legally allowed to. And of course, does Amnesty International ever interview the people who went to South Korea and went back to North Korea? And there's been a number of those people. There are actually a number of people in North Korea who defected to South Korea and then went back. Do they ever interview those people? No. And so Amnesty International publishes all this stuff about North Korea that, according to their own writing, is given under duress. That is not admissible, right? You can't have a fair trial. Imagine you're having a trial. Imagine Joe Bob is on trial for murder, and he's on trial in a country where if you say anything good about Joe Bob, you go to jail. Is that a fair trial? Of course not. But yet Amnesty International conducts these human rights hearings about North Korea in South Korea, where it is a crime to say anything good about North Korea. Do you think those are legitimate hearings? I'm not saying North Korea doesn't violate human rights. I'm not saying North Korea, it's a very authoritarian military society. I'm not saying that people don't get hurt there and mistreated. I'm not saying they have a huge amount of freedom. They don't. But I'm saying that interviewing people in South Korea and having human rights hearings in South Korea about North Korea is not legitimate. I've always said this, and this applies to all of them. All kinds of Americans think they know about these countries, right? Because they interview people who fled from their country to the United States, right? And this is a really common thing, right? People are like, well, I know how bad Cuba is, Caleb. I met a Miami Cuban and they told me how bad it is. Caleb, I know how bad Iran is. I met somebody, a rich person from Sunset Park who's related to the Shah of Iran, and they fled here and they said the Ayatollahs are horrible. And it's like, again, there's room for legit criticism of any of these governments, but right? The people who hate their country so much that they pack up and flee to their country's enemy are not an unbiased and fair source about what life is like in that country, right? For example, I've always given this example. Do you think that interviewing Miss Scarlet from Gone with the Wind would give you an accurate picture of what life was like under slavery in the antebellum U.S. South, right? If you sat down Miss Scarlet, right? You ever watched Gone with the Wind, the classic racist American movie about how awful it was when the slaves got freedom, right? Miss Scarlet would sit there. I do declare, Captain Butler, oh, everything was great during slavery. It was so happy. Everyone was going to nice parties, but then them Yankees came down here and ruined everything. Oh, I do declare it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Would she be lying? No, she's not lying. That's how Miss Scarlet saw it. It was so bad. She lost her plantation. And as far as she was concerned, she was treating the slaves nice. But if you ask the slaves how they felt about it, they might give you a different version of events. If you ask the poor white people who were living in extreme poverty in the Jim Crow South, or and in the antebellum South, because they were competing with people who worked for free because they were literally slaves, do you think they might have a different perspective? Do you think people living in the North might have different perspectives? That one person's perspective is not a fair assessment of a country. And when you talk to somebody who is so opposed to their country, they pack up and move to the country that is at war with their country, to the country that's threatening their country with nuclear weapons, to the country that is imposing sanctions and trying to crush their country. You are getting an assessment of that country that is not accurate. There's a number of U.S. GIs who defected to North Korea. Joseph Dresnach, right? He was an American GI during the 1960s who ran across the DMZ and defected to North Korea. He lived in North Korea until he died. There's a great documentary about him that you can watch. It's called Crossing the Line. Joseph Dresnach, he's an interesting guy. But would anyone think, if you did a human rights report on America, and the only person you interviewed was Joseph Dresnach, would anyone take that seriously? Well, he fled. He actually lived in America, Caleb, and he fled across the DMZ, and now would that be a fair assessment? No, it would not be, right? I mean, Joseph Dresnach, he left America for a reason. He embraced North Korea for a reason. It wouldn't be fair, right? And that this is the bias in all of this. So Amnesty International, right, that runs these scathing propaganda reports against any country that the USA is targeting. And then to maintain its credibility, will make videos and do criticism of Guantanamo Bay and do criticism of Israel, etc. Russia is saying no to Amnesty International. Good for them. Because Amnesty International, not a big fan. And, when I saw those high school kids bust into the United Nations with their Free North Korea t-shirts, I was like, puke. Give me a bucket so I can puke into it. It's just, I have very, very, very little tolerance. I'll try not to get too fired up here, but when people, wow, I'm getting all biblical here, but what is it Jesus Christ said? He said, never criticize the speck in your neighbor's eye when you have a log in your own eye, right? And that one thing that I really don't like from Americans is when we will go around, we will find some country in Africa, right? Save Darfur. That was a big thing. Save Darfur when I was in high school. It's a whole propaganda campaign paid for literally by Israel. Save Darfur, about how this government in Africa, the Sudanese government, is oppressing people. And we got to just stand up against Sudan, the government of Sudan. And we got to stand up against China that does business with them. It's awful. And it's like, you want to save Darfur when your own government has just bombed and destroyed Libya, the most prosperous country on the African continent. You want to save Darfur when your own government violently destabilized Syria and brought terrorists and brought ISIS. You want to save Darfur when your government invades Iraq with lies about weapons of mass destruction and kills hundreds of thousands of people, and the country's been a mess ever since. You want to save Darfur, but you don't want to speak up against what your own government's doing. That might get you in trouble. Oh, somebody might disagree with you. But wow, this tiny country on the other side of the world that, many Americans, don't even know anything about. Wow, I'm just so moved. I'm going to save Darfur. Shut the fuck up. I hate that. I hate that. Don't criticize the speck in your neighbor's eye when you have a log in your own eye. Don't do it, right? And I get very annoyed by that because it's easy. There are no consequences, right? If you're in America and you say, I hate Russia, is there any punishment for that? No. If you're in America and you say, I hate North Korea, I hate China, I hate Cuba, I hate Iran, it takes absolutely no goddamn courage at all. None, right? But if you're in your own country and you speak up against the police, against the FBI, against the U.S. government supporting Israel, against the U.S. government supporting Ukraine, that's where the consequences come in, my friends. That's where the consequences come in, and that requires real courage. And Amnesty International, they are very, very good at training young high school kids to be human rights activists. Well, gee golly, why? I am so opposed to North Korea. I'm going to wear a free North Korea t-shirt, gee golly. Oh, that's what I'm going to do. Oh, boy, I'm going to echo CNN propaganda. It's activism. Yay! Oh, I hate that stuff. Hate that stuff. Don't like it. Don't like it. Don't like it one bit. Don't like it one bit. So yeah, I see Russia going after North Korea, or Russia going after Amnesty International, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Amnesty International. I don't mind. I'm not surprised that Russia is doing that. I'm not surprised one bit. Not surprised one bit. And it used to be that it was right wingers and conservatives who were the big advocates of regime change. Now on the right, we've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are, saying, hey, I've never met a Houthi. I don't want my kids to die for Israel. Who's saying, let's make peace with Russia. Let's stop funding the war in Ukraine. And it's liberals that tend to support the wars. And, my latest, I've been publishing different compilations of articles that I've written over the years. This is the latest little compilation text that I put together. It's called The Regime Change Industry. It's mainly articles I wrote when I was at the UN, when Samantha Power was the UN ambassador under Obama. And I investigated who Samantha Power is. I investigated, Brzezinski and, the Columbia University International Studies, center that Barack Obama was trained by. And I wrote this is a compilation of a number of pieces I've written. The Regime Change Industry, the woke left, Samantha Power, and the deep state. And you'll notice people are getting upset about that cover. Good. I'm making them think how the rainbow flags and the cruise missiles walk hand in hand, right? And how the socially liberal human rights agenda walks hand in hand with the bomb and destroy countries agenda. And that needs to be said over and over and over again. Needs to be pointed out. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm raising this issue, and I'm glad it's making people uncomfortable to some degree or other. That's the sad thing, right? So when I was in high school, they had the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. That was the if you were an athlete and you wanted to pray, they had like a prayer service every Friday. And there was I don't know, there weren't very many clubs at my high school, but I guess if you go to college, if you go to high school in the suburbs, you can join the Gay Straight Alliance. You can join the Amnesty International Club, right? So in liberal areas, you can get recruited to the regime change industry. So there you go. There you go. Well, gee golly, Caleb, are you saying that we shouldn't have human rights around the world? You sound like you're some kind of Russian apologist. I don't much care for what you're saying. Not gonna hear it. Not gonna hear it. Will not have mind corrupted by Russian propaganda. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh. I've got little tolerance for high school regime change activist Mickey Mouse, right? Yeah, not a big fan. Not a big fan of high school regime change activist Mickey Mouse. We gotta invade Syria, Caleb. That's what we gotta do. Syria's just oppressing its people, and that's why we gotta go invade them. Well, what happened to Libya after they were supposedly oppressing their people? Look what happened, and we bombed and destroyed it. Has it gotten any better? What? That's not important. I mean, people are dying right now. We gotta go invade. Well, what happened to Iraq? We said Saddam Hussein was so bad, and now look, Iraq's way worse off. Oh, don't worry about the past, Caleb. We just gotta go in there right now. Don't you see this picture of a dying child? I'm crying. Oh my God, you're a bad person. You don't care about the crying. I'm telling you, every time we invade one of these countries, supposedly to help the people, life gets worse for the people. People are drowning on rafts in the Mediterranean trying to get out of Libya since we helped them, right? People have been in Syria, been fleeing as refugees ever since we helped them. People in Iraq have never recovered. It's been 20 years since we helped them, and things have gotten better. I'm just telling you, it makes life worse. Why are you talking about the past? Who cares? Don't you see the crying picture? Don't you see the crying innocent picture? That's what we got to focus on, Caleb. Oh, don't you care about this poor innocent child? Oh my God. Ugh. Frustrating. I am in an interesting mood tonight. I will say it that much. I am in an interesting mood tonight. I do see that our chat is getting lively as always, and my hat off to everyone in the chat. We're on the Rumble right now, and we're on YouTube right now, and we're on Facebook right now. So if you got a question for the second half, by all means, send a Rumble rant if you're on Rumble, and send a super chat or a Cash App if you're on YouTube, or you just want to ask me a question. I can accept either one, Cash App or Rumble rant. May 19th, the birthday of Ho Chi Minh, the birthday of Malcolm X, and it is also the anniversary of the death of a great head of state, a great statesman who I did interview. I had the honor of interviewing the great statesman, Ibrahim Raisi. So tonight, I'm just going to show the interview I did with Raisi because it's pretty important. I don't know what more to say about it. He died tragically in a helicopter crash. There's a lot of Iranians who suspect foul play because his foreign minister also died, etc. And after he died, I gave a tribute to him on RT. So I'm going to show my interview with Ibrahim Raisi. This was at the UN. I had a head of state face-to-face exclusive interview with the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Here we go.
Countries from the developing world having more prominence and importance in international affairs. Do you feel that the United Nations could be restructured in a way that would give more representation to developing countries?
In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, I think the UN and its mechanisms. I will reiterate that the UN and its mechanisms need to be revised so that it can fulfill its role of enhancing peace, security and justice. And if the UN, the Security Council and the various UN branches are not revised, then I think that with the new centers of power that have emerged in the world, with the global coalitions and the developing countries, the role of the UN will diminish day by day, and it will certainly not be able to fulfill its role as before. And in our view, its position and condition of functioning will inevitably come to naught. We definitely need to reconsider its position, structure, and condition of functioning.
Now, Your Excellency, my question to follow up from this is that as Iran has such a vibrant and beautiful history as a civilization, what do you foresee as the future of your country and its role in international affairs being?
Iran has a great past, a civilization, and this culture permeates the heritage of our country and our entire nation with its strong faith and religious beliefs. The rich civilizational past of the Iranian people, on the one hand, and their faith and the way they relate to divine values, on the other hand, has given birth to hope. And this hope will make the future brilliant. Today, this hope has emerged in the life of the Iranian people. The Islamic Republic is now following the path of progress, significant progress, despite the threats and sanctions that Iran's enemies have imposed and continue to impose. Today, with its faith and hope, the Iranian nation has been able to make the enemy falter and retreat. In my opinion, with this faith and hope, with Iran's past and its civilization, we can take confident steps towards growth and prosperity in the future.
Now, Iran is one of the 6 countries that was just invited to join the BRICS. And I'm curious as to why you believe this development occurred and what it is that Iran can offer to the BRICS nations.
Iran is a country with great potential. Iran has an extremely important geopolitical position. First, relations with the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. On the other hand, relations with Central Asia and Central Asian countries. The presence of many neighboring countries gives Iran certain opportunities. In addition to its geopolitical position, Iran has significant domestic potential as an energy and communications hub. Iran as a junction can interconnect the East and the West, the North and the South. Iran is a country with great capabilities and potential, the most important of which, however, are its people, full of faith and determination. Thanks to that, today it has been able to position itself, not only in the region but also in the world, as a leader of resistance against enemies. In fact, over these 40-plus years, the Iranian nation has shown that it can make an impact in the region and in the world. In the new world order that is now emerging, Iran is considered a key player. Iran occupies an important place in the emerging world order because the resistance movement in the region is linked to the name of Iran. Therefore, the potential that Iran possesses on the one hand and the potential that BRICS possesses on the other hand are coming together to form a powerful movement. I believe that the BRICS countries are just as important to Iran as Iran is important to the BRICS countries. This group is being formed to play a role in various fields, both regionally and internationally, especially in the field of trade and economy.
Iran has faced widespread criticism for its stance on the Ukraine conflict, with Kiev and its partners lashing out and criticizing Iran. What would you say to those who look on at this, and it appears to be some kind of double standard? What do you have to say on this point?
Look, we are convinced that the war between Ukraine and Russia needs to come to an end as soon as possible. Most decisively, it will be good for all the parties. If we want to understand what had caused this war, it is NATO's desire to expand its influence on more countries and establish its presence and set up military bases not only in Ukraine, but in many other states. Naturally, what we observe now happening is Ukraine seriously increasing its capacities thanks to America and Europe, above all in terms of the military aid it receives. Naturally, this only pushes it to continue the war. Let's see who is to benefit from a prolonged war. Is it Ukraine? Is it perhaps Europe? Or is it those who are praying today for this war to go on? I am convinced that with regards to this issue, the Islamic Republic of Iran, above all, stands for facilitating the end of this war, playing a mediator's role between Russia and Ukraine if possible. However, all those who are today sending all sorts of aid, including financial and military aid to Ukraine, do not wish to end the war. They wish to protract it by any means possible. The Islamic Republic of Iran, due to the ample opportunities it now has at its disposal, has been blamed by the West, which is trying to throw in more accusations. We have given our response to these accusations on different forums. We said, if you have something to back up these accusations, please produce it. They have not been able to produce a single piece of evidence or proof of any kind. Today, we have no doubt that their strategy is to keep accusing the Islamic Republic in order to disparage it and set public opinion against it. But this trick, just like all the other tricks they have used against the Islamic Republic, won't help them.
Now, Washington recently arranged the unfreezing of billions of dollars of Iranian funds that had been frozen in South Korea. But now, Washington is threatening to freeze these funds once again because they disapprove of how Iran may be spending this money. What do you make of these moves from Washington? What is their intent? Does this seem like erratic behavior? Is there a strategy behind what they're doing?
You see, it wasn't fair when the funds were frozen, because they belong to the people of Iran. They shouldn't have frozen the funds. All the time the funds were frozen and the accounts arrested, this caused harm to the Iranian people. Now that the people of Iran again have access to these funds, we are spending them trying hard to take care of the needs of the Iranian people. But this American spirit of superiority, it was so typical of them to arrest our funds. Their sense of superiority allowed them to crack down on the Iranian people, to impose sanctions. Slapping nations with sanctions is so typical of the Americans and speaks of the uncurbed sense of superiority and tyranny that is at their core. Of course, Iran is a living witness of America's tyranny, both in terms of the American sanctions and in many other regards. I believe that our approach here and elsewhere involves perseverance, resistance, and standing our ground.
Now, I would like, if possible, for you to give us your assessment of the prospects and future of relations between Iran and Russia.
We have enjoyed long-standing relations with Russia in multiple areas, including politics, economics, trade, defense, and security. And our cooperation is developing every day. Even the war in the region couldn't slow down our cooperation in multiple areas. Quite the opposite. The political will that prioritizes expanding our cooperation, particularly in the areas of trade and economy, as well as our partnership in the International North-South Transport Corridor Initiative and regional cooperation, pursues the development of our relations. Today's issues have had no impact on the relationship between Russia and Iran and never will. Our relationship with Russia is of strategic importance, and no developments on the global scene can change that.
Now, we understand your time is limited and you have many affairs to take care of, so we have just one final question. It's been a year since Iran was marked by a huge amount of unrest. And it's pretty clear the United States was backing this unrest and that there was a huge amount of media demonization of Iran broadcast around the world in the aftermath and during this unrest. What would you say to those who have seen these reports in Western media and have a negative image of Iran in their mind as a result of these portrayals? What would you like them to know that they have not been told?
I think enough time has passed since then, a full year, so we can better see the situation, the setting, and what happened behind the scenes. Even those who had no information and were misled by the media and their false news can now see the facts and understand the essence of what happened. The United States and its European allies tried to ride the wave. They thought they could strike the Islamic Republic at that moment. On gender issues, for example, and on economic issues. They started a hybrid war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. But after a little while, we saw the Iranian people prevail in that war. So the Iranian people was victorious again. When I spoke at the UN, I said that the Iranian people had won this hybrid war and had been able to secure this victory in the situation created by Iran's enemies. The hostile media, psychological, economic and political pressures. As you can see for yourself today, all the opponents, all the enemies of Iran, although they made an attempt to bring back at least the memory of the events of a year ago, they did not succeed. They failed completely. And the people who had any doubts that the enemies of Iran were behind this, the enemies who sought to put the Iranian Republic through hardship, can now see clearly that the Islamic Republic of Iran is not a weak sapling, but a strong tree that will not bow under these blows. The roots of the Islamic Republic are very deep. They did not begin yesterday. Over the years, we have become accustomed to hearing what the United States, some other Western countries and detractors have to say to the Islamic Republic. Each time, they give us 6 months. Since the victory of the Islamic Revolution, every year they say that in 6 months, the situation in the Islamic Republic will change. I suppose it has now been about 80 times 6 months since they started saying that. It has been demonstrated to them that the Islamic Republic is a powerful state, a state that is now stronger than ever. In the meetings I had with some of the media and political pundits during my 2 days in New York, they admitted that it has been proven to everyone that the Islamic Republic, in the words of yours truly, will not bow. And this time, just like previous times, they failed. I hope that this time they've realized that the Islamic Republic is a powerful state, and most importantly, that God Almighty is looking after us. And with the faith of our people, with their hopes and trust, and what is important is that, as the leader of the Islamic Revolution has repeatedly emphasized, it is not lies that are the basis for the continuation of the revolution, but the faith and the hopes of our people. Indeed, the revolution continues because of the faith and hopes of the people, which I have shared with you and all the esteemed viewers today. And a nation that is beloved and faithful is indeed a religious nation, and a nation that has hope. And a nation that is beloved and faithful is indeed a religious nation, and a nation that has hope. There is hope for the future, and a very bright future.
Yeah, that was my chat with the leader of Iran, the president of Iran. Now, when he died tragically 1 year ago today, I actually gave a tribute to him on the international television broadcast. This is my tribute to the Iranian leader.
We just showed your interview that you did back in September 2023 with the Iranian president. What were some of your impressions of the man?
Well, it was really an honor to sit down with him back in September because I've covered a number of American elections. You know, I asked Donald Trump a question at one of his press conferences. And when I spoke with the head of state of the Islamic Republic, I was speaking to somebody of a completely different brand, a completely different category. I mean, this was a deeply religious man. This was a longtime clerical figure in Iran, a judge, a legal scholar. This was someone who took the history of his country and the project of carrying out the Islamic Revolution and national rejuvenation very seriously. And every answer that he gave me came from a place of a very sophisticated understanding of geopolitics and really, I should say, a more Eastern approach and a more long-term approach to how one should govern a country. He wasn't worried about sound bites and scandal and gossip and rumors and all the stuff we hear from American and Western leaders. He was focused on kind of a long-term vision of how the Eastern parts of the world could come together. He was very excited about cooperating with Russia, cooperating with China. He was very critical of the United States and how it's destabilized and meddled in Iran's internal affairs. It was quite a conversation, and it was really an honor to speak with him. And I really wish that American audiences could understand how our leaders are kind of out of touch with how figures like him govern in different parts of the world.
Well, speaking of the sort of vision that President Raisi had for Iran, what would you say was the significance of his election back in 2021?
Well, he came on the heels of Iranian President Rouhani, who was a reformist, who was seen as being more sympathetic to the United States and had come to power on a platform of saying that if he carried out the Iran nuclear deal and negotiated with the United States, that would improve things for the Islamic Republic. And Rouhani, his predecessor, was proved devastatingly wrong because the Iran nuclear deal was signed and the USA ripped it up. And not only did they betray the deal, but then they murdered Qasem Soleimani, the top Iranian general, military figure, national hero. So when Riazi was elected, it was very much seen as a repudiation of kind of the reformist policies and a real reiteration of the principles of the Islamic Republic and the Islamic Revolution, the anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist principles. I mean, he called himself a principalist. His critics called him a hardliner, but he said he was a principalist, and he was reasserting the principles on which the Islamic Republic was founded. And that's particularly important right now because Iran is very much a target of Israel because of their support for the Palestinians. And support for the Palestinians was something that he was very firm, and he was kind of leading the country to kind of hold itself together in the face of the murder of Qasem Soleimani and more recently the brutal attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. And so it's important to understand him in that light. He came to power as a repudiation of figures who had tried to conciliate with the United States and then gotten slapped in the face.
Well, of course, we have very little official information right now. We don't know if there were any foreign powers involved in this incident involving Raisi. But what do you think that it could mean for Tehran and its foreign relations in the region and beyond, as well as domestically?
Well, the fact that already all over Iran there is suspicion of Israeli involvement, American involvement, that reflects what Iran has been subjected to for decades. Criminal economic sanctions, the funding of destabilization movements to try and tear the country apart. You know, the Mujahideen at Khalq, which was considered for years to be a terrorist organization that conducted assassinations and worked with Saddam Hussein. They are openly celebrated by the U.S. government and promoted by top American politicians. And let's not forget, 1988, you had an Iranian civilian aircraft that was shot down by the United States. And U.S. President Reagan and later U.S. President Bush refused to apologize for shooting down this civilian aircraft. So the fact that there's widespread suspicion that the American government or the Israeli government could have been involved, based on what Iran has faced since its revolution, and most especially in recent months and recent years, that's not really surprising. It would fit what Iran has been subjected to, and it would kind of, it would match the pattern of attacks on Iranian leaders, assassination of prominent Iranian national heroes and political figures like Qasem Soleimani. So I think people should understand that such suspicion, this isn't just internet conspiracy theories. It kind of matches a pattern of how that country has been treated.
Well, just to add on what you just mentioned there, Caleb, we just got official confirmation from the vice president of Iran that Raisi, unfortunately, has been confirmed killed as a result of this incident. But that was RT correspondent Caleb Maupin. Thanks a lot for bringing us those details.
Indeed. Yeah, that was my tribute to Ibrahim Raisi 1 year ago when he passed away. So, we try to just focus on building, focus on the future, focus on what we can do now to advance the forces of right and peace and justice and trade and economic development. But we can't forget where we came from. We can't forget the past. And, it was really an honor on my part to have been able to meet with and speak to him as an American, to basically represent the American people who oppose imperialism, the real America, not the Wall Street imperialists and not the big bankers and corporations that want war, but the real America that wants peace. And to be able to sit down with him in his hotel in New York City and have that conversation was a real honor. And to be able to then give that tribute a year ago after he lost his life, I'm deeply honored. And I know that, as weird as my life is, and it's taken a lot of weird twists and turns, I know that that I'm here for a purpose, and it's not about me. I'm serving something bigger. There's a bigger cause. And I am being used by something powerful, and that's good, right? And that it feels good to know you're part of something bigger. So, I know his family is mourning. I know the Iranian people are all mourning the loss of their president. So I just wanted to touch on that because it is the anniversary. I wanted to touch on a couple other things before we start answering questions. However, if you do have any questions, you can send questions in. Questions are appreciated. That's what makes the second half of the show so much fun. I see we got some questions coming in already, but a couple other things. First of all, the European Union. We just got to say this. The European Union is not democracy. It's not. I mean, there's no way you can say the European Union is democracy. Why? Well, number one, Romania had an election, and they elected a pro-Russia, anti-imperialist guy. And so the European Union nullified the elections. They had another election, and they didn't let that guy run. Now, on top of that, there's a party in Germany that is very, very critical of war against Russia and is, kind of a conservative, more nationalist, kind of a Trumper party in Germany, the Alternative for Germany party, the AfD. And the European Union, it looks like Germany is outlawing that party. They're having conversations about outlawing that political party, banning it from the elections. In France, there's a presidential candidate who's quite popular, she, is in favor of having a better relationship with Russia. Her name's Marine Le Pen. They've banned her from running in the elections. They're not having free elections in the European Union right now because they're afraid people who don't want to escalate and be hostile to Russia on behalf of the Western financial system might win. The people in Germany are like, why are we fighting with Russia? They're right on our border. Why don't we buy their oil and gas and, save some money? And so their right to vote for a party that thinks that way is being taken away. The people in France are saying, again, why are we fighting with Russia? Why? And so their right to vote for a party that says that in the upcoming election is being taken away. In Romania, they did vote for somebody. They did vote for somebody who was going to fix things. And then they nullified the election. The EU, the European Union, is at this point blatantly undemocratic. And it's so crazy because their undemocracy is in the name of democracy. It's like, well, Russia's not democratic, Caleb. And Russia is so not democratic, we're told. I mean, I've been there. I mean, Putin is wildly popular. I've seen their elections. They have fair elections. Russia is democratic. But in theory, we're told Russia is not democratic. So based on that, we got to fight Russia. And in order to make sure we fight Russia for not being democratic, we got to stop being democratic. Now, do you see the dog chasing its tail? Wait. Because the people in a democracy might not want to keep opposing Russia, we've got to make sure we don't have democracy here to make sure that we fight for democracy somewhere else. This is so absolutely insane. It's absolutely crazy. Another thing I wanted to touch on, I'm really done with social media drama. I really am. But every so often something gets across my desk and I go, wah, 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 and it's like ironic. So one of our old friends, I should say, I mean, I'm being sarcastic, he's not really a friend of ours, is Destiny Stephen Bunnell. Destiny Stephen Bunnell. He is the world's first professional video game player, right? That's his claim to fame, is that he lives in Nebraska and he worked at a carpet cleaning company, but he was really, really good at playing Warcraft, World of Warcraft. And he figured out a way to monetize. He started making money by streaming World of Warcraft, and he is the world's first professional video game player. Oh my God, right? Yeah, it's that, there's many chronically online people who wish they could be Destiny Stephen Bunnell. And he was a libertarian, and he was just kind of a libertarian, video game streaming bro. But then somebody decided to make him famous for debating Trump supporters. And so they blew him up. It was all over all these mainstream outlets. Meet the professional video game player who's going to debate Trump supporters. And so he started debating Trump supporters. That became his gimmick. And he's just this internet guy who is very obnoxious and very slimy and dishonest in his debating tactics. He's just really awful in a lot of ways. They've made him internet famous. He's part of BreadTube. They say he's not part of BreadTube because he doesn't call himself a socialist or whatever, but it's like BreadTube is part of the same deprogramming operation with Steve Hassan, with all of them. It's waging psychological warfare against people with anti-establishment views, both Trump supporters and leftists that are not, on board with Trump derangement syndrome. And, and all the BreadTube people have gone on his streams and he blew them up. And, he's just part of this internet deprogramming operation. And I mean, I haven't looked at the details and I don't care, right? But the allegation is that, I don't even want to say what the allegation is. There's some, drama related to his personal life and things he may have done or whatever. I don't care. Not going to go there. But that said, he's having an event in Queens, New York, in New York City. He's got an event coming up in June in this city. And there was going to be, the very prominent, liberal anti-Trump guy was going to speak there. Who was it again? Again, I don't pay attention. I really can't stand these like liberal channels, but it was David Pakman, right? David Pakman was going to speak at an anti-Trump rally starring Destiny, right? Destiny was having in Queens, June 22nd, he's having a big anti-Trump, whiz-bang, shabab, I don't know what you want to call it, hootenanny. He's having a big anti-Trump hootenanny in Queens, New York, right? Takes a lot of bravery to do that, right? Everyone in Queens loves Trump. I'm just kidding. But he's having an anti-Trump hootenanny with AOC and all kinds of people coming up. And so Destiny Stephen Bunnell is doing that. Well, David Pakman dropped out, citing these sexual rumors about Destiny. And it's just like, well, there you go. There you go. I mean, that's what happens. You know what I'm saying? Destiny, you throw slime at people. You talk about people's private lives, you spread rumors, you insult people on the internet, and eventually, what goes around comes around. And so now David A. Pakman, David A. Pakman won't speak at Destiny's anti-Trump event. What a pity. And this shows you that cancel culture is a circular firing squad. It's like you know, what goes around comes around. And, you know, I will say this, the longer that you're on the internet, the more that you're on the internet and the more famous you get on the internet, it's inevitable that there will be some kind of nasty sexual rumor about you. That's kind of par for the course at this point, right? You know, if you really hate somebody, you obviously blow up the sexual rumor. If you really like somebody, you obviously downplay it. But it's like, that's basically what happens. And sometimes, you know, it works better if it's like loosely somehow based on something that actually happened, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they just make shit up. And if you have a bigger platform, it just goes everywhere. And I mean, that's why we're trying to stay away from the internet. I mean, the internet is just toxic, right? And if you're on the internet, if you're an online personality, you know, the clock starts basically, and it's only a matter of time before your sex life becomes, you know, a topic of discussion. And that's really disgusting. And it's, you know, I mean, people deserve their privacy. Rape is rape. Sexual assault is sexual assault. And then there's a lot of other things. And you look at the details of what Destiny is accused of and stuff. It's like, I don't want to know, and I don't care. And Destiny's a slime ball, right? But I guess he's having his big event in Queens, and David Pakman won't be there because Destiny is accused of some gross stuff. Well, you know, what goes around comes around, and I don't know. That's just, I mean, it's getting stupid. It's getting stupider by the day or whatever, but I saw that and I'm just like, wah, wah, wah. But anyway, my disagreement with Destiny is not about anything he's accused of or his private life. It's about politics. And so I thought, you know, why not? You know, why not have some front, you know, pretty funny that a guy named Pac-Man was going to speak at a Video Guys event. That's a good point, John McCarthy. Right? See, I'm old enough to get that, right? Pac-Man was one of the first video games, right? It was like a mouth that went wampa, 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 wampa. But, you know, the kids these days wouldn't know that, right? Pac-Man is kind of obscure, right? You know, but there you go. Maybe it's a politician who gets a lot of donations from political action committees. He's a Pac-Man, right? But anyway, but yeah, David Pakman was going to speak at his event and pulled out. But, you know, we've had our fun with Destiny over the years. Destiny is desperate for a rematch with me because I destroyed him so bad when we had our debate. So, you know, why not, you know, enjoy some of the Destiny, you know, stuff, you know, why not, right? Why not revisit some of the Destiny stuff? I thought it might be fun. I you know, the fact that Destiny is so desperate for a rematch with me is why I will not do it. He really wanted to debate me at the beginning of the Ukraine war. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that because I already defeated him epically once. And he wants to like etch that out. And he's been studying me ever since then. And that, you know, often when I debate people, you know, I've noticed that there's an element of it's like the movie Spartacus. At the beginning of Spartacus, right, the slave army epically defeats the Roman army in a battle, and they come back and they speak to the Roman, you know, government, you know, and they're like, why did you, you know, why were they able to do it? Well, they were only slaves, you know. Oh, we didn't think, you know, and that's what always happens. Right? People like Destiny always assume that there could never be any possible argument on our side, right? And, you know, we never could possibly have anything on our side. And so I came to the debate prepared with, you know, data and statistics about why socialism is effective. And Destiny was not prepared for that, right? He expected that I was just going to come on there, and I don't know what he thought. And, you know, and so I epically blew him away, you know, and that was kind of my introduction. That's when this channel really started blowing up. It was right before the pandemic started. I was invited on Destiny's channel. So, you know, I thought I might, you know, have some fun with that. We'll, you know, show some of the Destiny debate. You know, why not? Since Destiny is doing stuff and, you know, being annoying, and David Pakman and all of that. So we'll do some of that. And then we'll answer people's questions. So if you got questions, Send them in, Rumble Rants, Super Chats. Here we go. This is, and we'll stop it and talk, I think, throughout it. We'll comment on this. But yeah, let's revisit some of my interactions with Destiny Stephen Bunnell.
When you say that socialism has never worked anywhere, and statements like that get very widely made on American television.
Wait, real quick, because you're about to, I don't care. I know you have a prepared.
See, so this is a thing he does frequently, right? He is saying socialism's never worked anywhere, but he derails. Right? He doesn't want you to be able to say anything you've prepared to say. So you'll notice that he says, well, I'm sure you're going to talk about Spain. And his premise is central planning, socialist economics has never worked anywhere. And so I start answering that. And then he derails to say, well, I'm not saying that, but he is saying that. So notice that. That's how obnoxious he is. He just does these derails where he just, it's about constant interruption. That's part of his tactic.
To answer to that, I'm not using the meme, socialism has never worked anywhere it's tried. What I'm saying is I don't think central planning has worked. My critique is much more specific here. And I would be like, if you have I'm curious, because I would have to go read more on them, because every time I've tried to read on places, so the only places I'm familiar with are like Vietnam or a lot of the older Soviet Union or some places in like Cuba. My understanding is that when we try to socially plan a lot of stuff, you just can't do it. There's so much for a government to keep track of. It's bureaucratic, it's slow, you can't respond to changing market conditions. So I'm saying central planning specifically doesn't seem to be a solution to an economy. That's what I'm saying specifically, not like the socialism has never worked meme.
Okay, I'm glad you're being more specific than that. But I would encourage you to read Maurice Dobbs' book, Soviet Economy Since 1917. Maurice Dobbs was a lecturer at the University of Cambridge in Britain, and I have quotations from the book right in front of me. In 1928, they launched the 5-year plans in the Soviet Union. By 1938, coal production had multiplied by 3.5 times. They had increased the rate of electrification tenfold. There were 20 new tramway systems. The number of hospital beds in rural areas had doubled. The Soviet Union at that point was the largest tractor producer in the world, and they were the largest locomotive producer in the world. Right? This notion that socialism has only resulted in people getting poorer or making everyone equally poor is false. In 1917, Russia was an impoverished agrarian country. By the mid-1930s, they were an industrial superpower. They were a country that was strong enough to defeat Nazi invaders. They were a country that eventually invented
hold on. A lot of this is just.
So first of all, the whole time I'm talking there, notice that he's on the computer and he's got a whole team of people that are Googling things. And, this is it's like a 20 against 1 fight, right? I came with my prepared information by myself, and he's got scores of people on there that are Googling things and telling him what to say. You do know that, right? Watching him typing away there. So basically, this wasn't me defeating Destiny. This was me defeating 25 or 75 Destinies, right? The whole time I was talking, he was on the computer crunching away with a whole team of people giving him talking points to argue against me.
True. So the Soviet Union was not strong enough to defeat the Nazi invaders. Firstly, in the early part of the war, the Nazis were involved in lending a lot of things like rubber.
And again, now this is just a nitpicky point. I just explained that the Soviet Union had huge economic successes and defeated the Nazis in World War II. And he's saying, well, yeah, but the USA helped the Soviet Union, so that doesn't count. That's an irrelevant, that's just completely a derail, right? That's just completely a derail. Did I say the USA didn't help the United States? Is that the thrust of my argument? Is that at any point did I say that the Soviet Union defeated the United States or defeated the Nazis all on their own? At no point did I say that, right? This is what a disgusting slimeball he is, but we'll continue.
And other materials to the Soviet Union. And later on, the Lend-Lease programs from the Western capitalist nations were a large part of the reasons of why the Soviet Union was able to field as much armor and everything as they could. These aren't controversial claims. Lend-Lease was a huge program that was massively successful to supply the USSR with supplies.
It's a global alliance, an anti-fascist coalition.
Sure, but it's disingenuous to say that it's
on their own either.
Sure,
they
but
had help as well. The United States had help.
I'm not saying that these are.
Yeah, you're not making a logical fucking point, Destiny. You're just trying to derail the fact that all the Allied countries helped each other during World War II does not diminish the Soviet achievement in any fucking way.
These are sure. I understand that. These are whataboutisms that aren't relevant to what I'm saying. Is that
no, you're doing a whataboutism that is not relevant to what I'm saying. The Soviet Union achieved astronomical military victory and was a machine during World War II, and American generals talked about it, everybody talked about it, and that is a fact. And the fact that the USA helped them, just like they helped America, just like Britain got help from the United States, just like, I mean, that's not a relevant point.
The idea that the USSR was some strong superpower that on its own could stand up to the Nazis, that is absolutely not true. They absolutely needed outside help. First from the Nazis themselves, and then once Hitler turned on Stalin, then from other Western nations via Lend-Lease.
When did they get help? They had a non-aggression pact. See, that's a non-aggression pact does not help.
Firstly. Secondly, you're talking about like how the Soviet Union was able to, accomplish so much in terms of like getting electricity, out to rural areas and hospitals and all of this. This is just industrialization. Lots of countries have done this under capitalism, under other economic systems, under socialism. And also part of Russia's rush to industrialization led to massive famines that are to this day debated about whether or not they're considered genocidal. So I don't know if I like the idea of like, well, I can modernize a country if I tell everybody to stop growing crops, starve to death 10 million people, and make some of them work in factories.
And how would that modernize a country? It's like, and so he's reading off the points that the 75 people on his team have given him. He's rattling off all of their points that he didn't think of, right? Again, my defeat of destiny was like defeating 75 people, not one.
I don't know if that's a good argument, saying like, well, look how quickly we industrialized our country. I don't know if I agree that that's a success of central planning.
I think you can look all over the developing world today and see a lot of free market countries that have not industrialized and have not done what Russia and China both did during the 20th century, right? This notion that socialism never creates growth, it's never worked anywhere, all it leads to is people being poorer. Look at Russia in 1917. Look at Russia by the mid-1930s.
Okay, hold on. We're back
Look at Russia by the 1970s. Look at China in 1949. Look at China today, the second largest economy in the world. That's a big fat lie. And I am sick of hearing it because it contradicts reality. Socialism has raised countries up out of poverty. Meanwhile, all over the developing world,
this is like literal. These are like
still illiterate, where people don't have a basic electricity, right?
I feel like I'm running down.
Okay, let's.
Oh God, he's making points. Oh, I can't handle it. Oh, must interrupt. Oh. It's just like it's all about interruption. It's like I'm making points that are valid. I've backed them up with data. And it's like, must interrupt.
Plug tree right now. I'm talking about central planning. I understand that you've probably heard a million times, socialism makes people poor or whatever. I would never make that claim.
That's false.
Well, no, but I would say that like
so then it's fair for me to argue against it then, isn't it? Right. It's like, so that is the premise of your argument, Destiny. So quit glish-glopping and say, well, I'm not saying that, and then saying it, right?
Industrialization of the world. So much the same way when people say like, oh, capitalism is what's causing global warming. I don't think that's true. I think it's industrialization is what's causing global warming, right?
Yeah.
We consume a lot of stuff.
Yeah, stop industrializing to save the planet.
We produce a lot of emissions as a result of that. Like, it's industrialization. When you talk to me about how, like, well, the living standards from the 1900s to the 2000s has increased, I'm not going to sit there and say, well, capitalism did that. And I'm also not going to say in socialist countries, socialism did that. Technological innovations, medical innovations, agricultural innovations, like these are the things that have driven a lot of this. So I'm not giving you the meme that socialism hasn't helped any country.
Yes, you are.
I'm sure that we can find, whether we want to bring up Catalonia or other types of like smaller socialist societies that have existed to thrive for small periods of time. I'm sure we can find examples of that. What I'm saying is that central planning as a means of controlling an entire economy doesn't seem to be a realistic policy. If you want to talk more specifically about the USSR, we can, but I feel like that is not a good example for you to go to show off the successes of central planning when millions of people starved to death in that society as a result of central planning.
I think millions of people starved to death prior to the Russian Revolution. As an agrarian economy, when there was a famine, people starved to death all the time. Now, you're talking about specific famines that took place, but prior to the Soviet Union, Soviet agriculture didn't have, or Russian agriculture and the surrounding countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they didn't have tractors, right? It was the Soviet Union that mechanized agriculture. It was the Soviet Union that electrified the entire place. They actually had the biggest hydroelectric power plant in the world in 1931, the Dnieper Dam. The fact that you gloss over the transformation of a deeply impoverished country into a country that was a superpower and is widely acknowledged to be a superpower, and you just say, yeah, but there were a bunch of famines, so none of that counts. That's completely disingenuous, right? The whole world realizes what happened there, and the whole world realizes what's happened in China. And furthermore, if you want to see countries that have been part of our global free market capitalist system and how they've flourished, take a look at Haiti. That country has NAFTA-style trade agreements with the United States. People eat dirt mixed with oil, right? The amount of poverty there is pretty big, right? And that's a free market country. But no one ever says Haiti's problems are because of capitalism. But all of Venezuela's problems are because of socialism. Take a look at Nigeria. This is the top oil-producing country in Africa. They have been doing business with Chevron and Shell Oil for decades, right? I mean, if oil and wealth and selling on the market would make them prosperous, they'd be a wealthy country. Their life expectancy is only 59. The rate of illiteracy the rate of literacy in terms of population that can read is not even 60%, right? The unimproved drinking water rates. Take a look at what the CIA World Factbook says about Nigeria, the top oil-producing country in Africa. That's what the free market has to offer, right? Free market capitalism is not industrializing countries. Why don't you compare India to Russia and China, for example, right? India did not have a socialist revolution. It had a nationalist revolution. It got its independence from the British. That was a good thing. But it did not have socialist construction or central planning. And compare it to Russia and China throughout the 20th century. Compare the conditions of the people in India to the people of Russia and China, and you can look pretty clearly there. And in fact, a lot of the industrialization that has happened in India happened because of the Soviet Union and China, right? It was the Soviet Union built steel mills in India. China is now doing a lot of business there. So this notion that capitalism is industrializing countries, you can talk about the Asian tigers. I'm happy to address the Asian tigers. That's an example. But I mean, all these immigrants that are pouring into the United States on the border right now, countries like Honduras, free market, capitalist country, where there are people that don't even speak Spanish, people don't have running water, people don't have electricity. Guatemala, take a look at Mexico. These free market countries have been looted and destroyed by international corporations, whereas countries that have central planning have raised people out of poverty, they've industrialized, they've electrified, they've wiped out illiteracy very consistently, despite the problems. And there are big problems. I don't deny that.
Okay, so I obviously I don't know the history of every single government in the world, but like based on some of the examples that you've given, I'm like incredibly suspect of the other examples that you have given. So like when you talk about like people don't blame Haiti for capitalism, but they do blame Venezuela, right? My understanding of Haiti is there are a lot of corruption problems that exist within that government. It's not literally just they tried capitalism and it's ruining the country. But then people do blame Venezuela. Well, that was because Venezuela like very specifically started to make socialist pivots in its economy. It started to nationalize more industries. It started to wait. Which part of that do you disagree? Do you disagree that they were expropriating industries? Do you disagree that they tried to hardcore set price control?
The rate of state ownership in Venezuela is actually much lower than the rate of state ownership in China. Other than
wait. How is that a response? No. You wouldn't compare the state.
Oil, very little is nationalized, and I've been to Venezuela, and one of the biggest problems they have is that their economy is entirely centered around oil. And when the oil price dropped in 2014, that caused a huge amount of scarcity. They need to have farms there. They need to have steel manufacturing there, and they don't have it. If they had state-run big steel mills and state-run farms and all of that, they'd be in a much better shape.
Okay. If you want to at a future debate, I would love to come back and talk about Venezuela, because I am positive that your assertions there, that it was just because oil collapsed, that's why that country fell apart, is absolutely not true. And that no person that has been involved.
Is a big problem as well.
No, not corruption. That it was very specifically. Okay, it was very specifically pivots towards trying to socialize or nationalize or expropriate parts of their economy to set incredibly restrictive price controls that caused capital industry to flee that country, that caused some firms to no longer produce goods there or provide goods for its people. This is one of the large reasons why Venezuela fell. It's not just because oil prices fell a little bit. You don't see other OPEC countries.
An oil-producing country, a huge oil-producing country, bigger oil reserves than Saudi Arabia, than I've heard. The oil prices drop, and at the same time, they suddenly start having big economic problems, but it's unrelated. It's all just because they believe in socialism too much. That's what you're saying? Oil price drop of 2014 was dramatic. At that point, you could buy a family meal at Kentucky Fried Chicken that would cost more than a barrel of oil.
The petroleum sector accounts for roughly, sure. So I'm just looking this up. Sure. I'm looking this up on the fly because I know you're very incorrect. The petroleum sector accounts for roughly 87% of Saudi's budget reserves, 90% of the export earnings, and 42% of GDP. That's petroleum in Saudi Arabia. And Venezuela, oil is.
Saudi Arabia had big economic problems as well.
Saudi Arabia didn't have pictures of families eating
Yeah. Also, Saudi Arabia is not subjected to huge sanctions. Saudi Arabia is not blockaded and barricaded by the West, right? I mean, it's like this is, it's like
rats off the street because their economy tanked so hard. I don't have people
not allowed to
from Saudi Arabia crying that they're in
the country that are guest workers, slaves. Saudi Arabia, you couldn't take a picture like that, and Saudi Arabia has had big economic problems during that time.
Sure. Okay. So
look,
I'm very curious.
He's saying, well, Saudi Arabia didn't have problems. This is Saudi Arabia. A third of the country are literally slaves. And on top of that, they're heavily tied in. They're not barricaded. There's no one blocking them from importing things. There's no sanctions on Saudi Arabia from the United States. So that's ridiculous.
Syria had problems. Oil-producing countries all suffered as a result of 2014.
They did suffer.
Go ahead and let Destiny. Go ahead and get your point in.
That Venezuela didn't.
Are you going to make the claim that Venezuela suffered just as much as every other OPEC country did when oil prices fell? Is that the claim that you want to make?
No.
So why did
Venezuela also suffers from sanctions from the United States? Venezuela also has big problems with corruption, and they also have the problem that they don't have. You said that the problem was they already had steel manufacturing. They already had big farms. No, the problem is they don't have it. It's a one commodity economy.
Why is that relevant? Why does that matter? You don't need to produce every good that your society consumes.
If your entire economy is centered around oil, right? And you are importing all of your food and products, and then you get sanctions imposed on you. And yes, there are big problems there, and they've manifested themselves. And I think it's interesting, though. Now, you acknowledge. Now, what I think is interesting about your Venezuela narrative is the narrative I normally get from people about Venezuela is that everyone has been poor and starving ever since they had socialism there, and that proves communism always fails. That's not the narrative that you have. You've admitted that there were economic successes there until a certain point. Now, why does the media lie? Why can't they admit what you just said? Why
I don't know. I'm not here to talk as a Fox News correspondent. I'm just curious why you think central planning is effective.
Or MSNBC or CNN. None of them can admit
MSNBC or CNN
with their socialist economy until roughly about 2014.
Why am I getting real?
Let's not
extensively obscures. Why are you saying this and none of them are saying?
I don't think Destiny wants to. I don't think Destiny.
If I wasn't there, he would be saying that. He knows that I'm smart enough to debunk it. But if I wasn't there, he would say exactly that, right? And that's what you need to remember about these types of people, right? That they'll make the exact same lying arguments when you're not in the room, right? You can have all the facts in the world, but they pander to the bias. So there we go.
He wants to speak for media companies.
Yeah, I'm not here to
Fox. I appreciate your honesty because everyone tells me all the time that everyone's been starving ever since they moved towards socialism in Venezuela. You admit that the problems began fairly recently. Thank you.
Thank
you for your honesty. So we can agree anti-communists are liars. We can agree on that. That the anti-communist narrative that's promoted throughout U.S. society is based on deception and falsehood. Thank you for admitting that. I appreciate it.
Look at him seething. He's in pain. Right? That he had to admit that the foundation, as much as he says, well, that's not what I'm saying, that is the premise that he's pandering to. Never worked anywhere. Everyone's always starving and poor because of it. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have any argument. That's the bias he's relying on. And he's just seething in pain because he had to distance himself from it. And I thoroughly debunked it and made him admit that argument and that premise is false.
I don't know if Destiny can
so I haven't
make that claim.
Anything.
Why is it necessary to lie, Destiny? Why don't they say what you just said? I
don't think Destiny can't speak for media companies. Destiny, go ahead and respond.
Because most of the people that were alive in the United States probably either have parents or grandparents that were involved in some crazy dumbass U.S. war against communism and the idea that like all commies are trying to destroy the world and blah 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 blah. And like that is a lie and it's stupid. It's incredibly stupid. The way that Americans view, if you ask the average American what is socialism, the answer they would probably give you is stealing money from the rich and giving it to the poor. Okay, I'm not here to defend the average American sentiments for socialism or communism. That's absurd. However, your counterpoints are just as propaganda-laden to try to say that industrialization in the Soviet Union was successful, even though these were done on the backs of massive famines that were a great showcase of the failures in central planning as a support for central planning.
Famines never happen under capitalism. People never starve under. I mean, this is obscure. And then you take a couple isolated famines and make them the characterization of an entire country industrializing and becoming a superpower. This is ridiculous. That would be like me saying that that, you know, the mass deaths in the U.S. Civil War prove that American capitalism doesn't work. That would be like me saying the Great Depression proves that capitalism doesn't work. I mean, that's ridiculous.
You could
a whole country becomes a global superpower, invents space travel, electrifies the entire place, is building some of the biggest hydroelectric power plants in the world. People that lived in huts are suddenly living in modern apartment buildings with electricity, but none of that counts because there was a famine along the way. That is absurd.
I'm not saying
miracles took place. The whole world was trying to be like the Soviet Union at that point.
The only miracle is that there are still Ukrainians and Kazakhs alive today to talk about how horrible central planning under the Soviet Union was. I mean, like, that's a miracle that, like, some people actually survived some of those.
Yeah. You know, it was the Soviet Union that electrified Ukraine. It was the Soviet Union that promoted the Ukrainian language. It was the Soviet Union that enabled Ukraine to have a written language of their own. It was the Soviet Union that drew the borders of Ukraine. I mean, it's like the fact that any of them are still alive. It's like you do realize that, like, it was under the Soviet leadership that Ukraine's population greatly expanded and its life expectancy nearly doubled and all this. Like, that is Nazi propaganda right there. The idea that the Soviet Union didn't benefit Ukraine and that, there's lucky there's any of them still alive. That is so ridiculous, right? I mean, that is so contrary. The birth rate in Ukraine greatly expanded. The Ukrainian national language and culture was promoted. Ukraine was industrialized. Ukraine's life expectancy went. I mean, it's like facts don't match what he's pandering to right there.
They were being executed if they tried to leave their starving district after the
Okay. I don't
executed if they tried to leave. When did that ever happen? Like, that's ridiculous. He's talking about the Berlin Wall in the 60s and people that's ridiculous.
I don't want to.
Every former socialist country of Eastern Europe, polls overwhelmingly show people saying life was better. That's not just in Russia. Soviet nostalgia is at an all-time high.
I don't want us to talk over top each other. So Destiny, go ahead. I'm going to give Destiny the floor for a minute.
Yeah, and then that's one thing they never want to acknowledge is that in all the formerly socialist countries, poll after poll after poll shows people saying life was better. That's just something they just conveniently gloss over. That's a point that it's just, you know, let's not talk about that. That doesn't matter, you know. That's just something that, you know, and it's like, look at him seethe when I bring that up because it's true. It's true. I have done the research. I've got real facts, and he's got his army of 75 people that are trying to debunk everything I'm saying with bullshit. But they can't because I've got truth on my side.
It was nostalgia under the old American system. People nostalgia.
But they lived under it. They know.
This is called whataboutism. What he accuses me of doing is what he's doing. It's whataboutism. I'm saying all these things that are true, and he's like, "Yeah, but people like America too." What does that have to do with anything I said? He's literally doing whataboutism. Mister, that's whataboutism. Is doing whataboutism.
Oh, how horrible it is, Destiny.
Okay. Let's rein this back. So let's rein this back. Destiny, go ahead.
I don't see any Nazi nostalgia in Germany. I'll tell you that much.
Really?
I don't.
Think around the world today, you don't think that there are groups like the AfD in Germany that's like...
Yeah, and the AfD are not Nazis. Listen to him. They're trying to outlaw a party in Germany that wants to have a better relationship with Russia. And he says, don't you think AfD are not Nazis, you idiot. Like, they're like conservatives. They're Trumpers. They're people in Germany who don't want to have World War III. My goodness.
Like, doubled its popular support.
I don't see Germans talking about how great the Nazi system was. I really don't. So, you know, the fact that Soviet nostalgia is so high, not just in Russia, but in, you know, all kinds of places, even like places like Romania that had big difficulties. People are nostalgic for the system of socialism that is existed.
Sure. People can be nostalgic for older systems for a couple.
But they're supposed to, if it's a hell on earth, they lived under it.
Well, it's not hell on earth for a lot of people. Thankfully, a lot of the people that had hell on earth fucking died. So they're not here to talk about how horrible the systems were because they died with like the parts of their children in their stomach after they ate them because they starved to death. So we don't have a lot of those people talking anymore about it.
That never happens under capitalism, right? I mean, there wasn't huge famines in India caused by the British Empire. There wasn't huge famines in Ireland caused by British capitalism. I mean, but
like this is the. Okay.
There were annual deaths of starvation in Russia all the time before the revolution. There were annual deaths of starvation in China all the time. But none of that is because of the old system.
Okay, hold on. Hold on.
Industrialized the place. They've actually gotten them out
Okay.
Them for that.
Destiny, why?
This is absurd.
Caleb, Destiny, why is he arguing your point for you?
Because saying that, like, well, there were massive famines in the Soviet Union, which a lot of them weren't as bad as the ones that happened in Ukraine and Kazakhstan. Saying that there were famines before central planning and then saying they were there after central planning, that's my argument. Yeah, central planning. So I don't know.
It was central planning that mechanized agriculture. That
No,
got them
that's
out of
all-
those situations. It was central planning that actually cured these problems. It was central planning that made China, instead of being a sick man of Asia that has mass impoverishment and mass famines all the time, into being the second largest economy in the world. You're blaming the system that cures famines and cures these problems, even though it takes a while to do it, perhaps. You know, they are the ones that actually are responsible for the industrialization. You're blaming them for something that happened under your system all the time.
I'm not.
The British.
Yeah, and look at him seething, because there is no way to argue against this. This is just blatant reality. These are just facts. Russia and China became superpowers and industrialized, and millions of people got lifted out of poverty with a socialist, centrally planned economy. That's a fact, right? And you can talk about famines, and you can talk about gulags, and none of that obscures the facts. And you can tell me that Stalin ate his sister for dinner, and you can tell me that you know, you can talk about all kinds of things, but some things are true and some things are not. And that despite whatever hardships that existed, the economic result of state central planning and a planned economy in the Soviet Union and in Russia was overwhelmingly positive. Right. And Destiny just sat there and look at him, right? So dishonest, so smug, and just seething because I'm talking about reality. So every time Destiny, there's a little blip of, you know, Destiny drama, I just throw that out there. So I wanted to get that out there. And we got one super chat that came in on the Cash App. We got a number of Rumble rants that have come in. So let's do our roll call, and then I'll start answering questions. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? I will call you all out as I see you. Day Ha in Seattle. Welcome. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Are you coming to the conference? Everyone in Chicago needs to come to the convention. OC, California, Orange County. Alexander G in Norway. Joe in Durham, North Carolina. St. Louis, Timoshenko. Penny in Minnesota. Peru. Singapore. Jacob from Wisconsin. Jake in New York City. Ed from Louisville. Ian in Chester, England. Chad in Spokane, Washington. Anway in India. Value, Moscow. Joshua in Nelson, British Columbia. Philip High, Brooklyn in the house. Anthony, Tumblr in British Columbia. Savannah, David DW. Ryan in Kansas City. Alex in Brazil. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. We got Bob in Troy, New York. Bob, good to have you, Bob. Bab, good to have you, Bab. Bob, Bab. We got Alex. We got Rocky from Oklahoma City. Alex Giovanni in Oregon. We got St. David's, Bermuda. We got Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Welcome, Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Welcome, welcome, welcome. St. David's, Bermuda. Alex Giovanni in Oregon. We got Gabrielle Freedom, Florida Suncoast. Welcome, Gabrielle. We got Tavis in New Hampshire. Welcome, Tavis. Good to have you with us. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. We got Tijuana, Mexico. Tijuana, Mexico. So far from God, so close to the United States. John McCarthy in Chicago. I salute you, sir. I salute you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Anybody else? We've got a fair amount of Rumble rants that have come in. If you do have a question, you can send it as a Rumble rant or as a super chat to Caleb Oppen 22. We've got, it looks like 3 Rumble rants. We got Dan in the LA area. We got 3 Rumble rants that have come in. 4 Rumble rants that have come in. 4 of them. We've got one super chat that came in. So generally what I have done on these streams is that I have I played some music to start out the second half of the show. And then I start answering people's questions. So I think I will do some music tonight. I think I'm going to do an Irish song. I think I have this Irish song to play. Let me find it. Let me see if I got it. Do I have it? Do I have the Irish song? I might have it and I might not. There's an Irish song I like to play on these streams. Let me see if I can find it. Do. Do I have it? I might not have it. Just looking for some music to put on as we prepare for the second half of the show. If you have any more questions are always appreciated. Give me something to talk about. Give me something to talk about. I was going to play a Gaelic song that I particularly like, and I don't think I can find the file, so let me see if I can pull it up. There's many different recordings of this Gaelic song. It's a Gaelic fighting song. I'm not even going to pronounce it. I'm an Irish American, but I'm so divorced from my heritage, I don't speak Gaelic. And but I like it because there's many different recordings of it, and it's a very old Gaelic tune. So let me see if I can find a version of it that I can play on here. There's many different recordings. Like every traditional Irish singer has performed this song, and I generally play a version of it, a choir version of it from a bar. Is what I play on these streams because it's very moving, right? It's just a bunch of people performing it in a bar. It's like a choral arrangement, and it's quite powerful. So yeah, I think I can play that version. So let me see if YouTube or if the downloading thing will be cooperative, and it looks like it will be. And it looks like it's coming. Yep. All right. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more. All right. It looks like we're going to have our song here in a second. So yes, let's do it. Hold on. Here we go. All right. We're going to have a song. We have our song. Look at that. Would you look at that? We have the song we would like to play. So I'm going to put on this traditional Gaelic song, which translates basically to welcome home. That's basically what the lyrics translate to. It's like welcoming home the fighters. Here we go. So if you've got any questions for the second half of the show, send them as Rumble Rants, or you can cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. I'm taking questions in two different ways. So questions can be sent via Rumble Rants, or they can be sent to Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App. Those are the two ways that questions can be sent, for the second half of the show. So yeah, let's enjoy this music. Send me a few more questions to make the second half of the show more entertaining. Yeah, here we go. One of my favorite Irish tunes. Here we go.
Ole
there you go. You can see why that's one of my favorites. I find the tune to be quite moving, quite a powerful tune. So I'll start answering people's questions. Leo Messi says, why has Russian rhetoric meant to appeal to Americans consisted of conservative points? He lists some of them. Because conservatives at this point are more open to hearing it. Because of this, look at the cover of my latest book. The way that U.S. foreign policy, which is aggressive and hostile and tries to overthrow governments, is being sold in our time, is with social liberalism. That it's the liberals, the Samantha Power, woke left, regime change, deep state apparatus. They're the ones that are emphasizing hostility toward Russia, hostility toward China, hostility toward Iran, hostility toward Venezuela. It's this activist NGO apparatus that's been created to sell war. And so it's people on the conservative side that are just kind of like, hey, America first, I want to focus on my family. Let's focus on building up our own economy. And they're the ones that are more sympathetic. So it makes sense, right? You talk to who's more friendly to you, right? What it really gets down to is that there's a division within the ruling class. And I've talked about this many, many times. There's a division in the ruling class between the ultra rich, the big monopolies that are tied in with the CIA and the intelligence agencies that fund these big activist groups, etc., and the lower levels of capital, which are just concerned about making money and are not tied in with the global system so much and are not as interested in regime change wars. They just want to maximize their profits. And that this is that basically, during the Cold War, there was a book called The Yankee and Cowboy War that argued that the 1960s political upsurge was a fight between the Eastern establishment of New England liberals and the Rockefellers versus the military-industrial complex. And what I've argued is that the Yankee and Cowboy War has been reversed. And now the Cowboys are more anti-war, and the Yankees, the Eastern establishment, are more pro-war. And I have this whole book, Divisions in the Ruling Class, Conflict Within the U.S. Elite from the Cold War to Today, where I talk about McCarthyism, I talk about the downfall of Joe McCarthy, I talk about the Vietnam War, I talk about Richard Nixon, I talk about who the neocons are, where they came from, and that's the division. Also, though, I will just throw this out there. This is one major difference between the Cold War and today, is that during the Cold War, there were a number of countries. Chile is the most famous example, but you've got Indonesia, you've got many countries where civil society, the trade unions, the college professors, the women's organizations, the youth organizations, what they call civil society was anti-imperialist, right? In Indonesia, civil society was anti-imperialist. They elected an anti-imperialist leader, but the military was tied in with the United States, trained by the United States, and the military overthrew the elected government. Chile is another example. In Chile, civil society was anti-imperialist. You had trade unions, you had, women's groups and others. They got Salvador Allende elected, and then the military, led by Pinochet, tied in with the United States, overthrew the government. And that used to be how it was during the Cold War. The USA was a military power, and so the militaries of these countries were trained by the United States, were tied in with the United States. But the mass organizations, the community groups, were communist-led. The communist parties were very, very effective leaders of labor unions, very effective organizers of university students, very effective. So the communists that were the main force of anti-imperialists, they dominated civil society, and the military would frequently overturn civil society. And what is the case now is that that's largely flipped, right? Now it tends to be that the U.S. government, USAID, and the Ford Foundation and George Soros have set up civil society organizations all over the world that are controlled by them. However, Russia and China are very good at offering building of infrastructure to countries and military support, because Russia and China have very strong militaries. They manufacture weapons, and they've had to fight for their very existence, defeat the Nazis, defeat the Japanese invaders, protect their borders, etc. And so Russia and China offer military support, and they build infrastructure. And the civil society, the women's groups, the campus groups, these kind of groups are dominated by the United States. And so it's a flip from the Cold War. And that's, again, the Yankee and Cowboy War has been reversed. And actually, a lot of the voices, even in the United States, that are more sympathetic to Russia and China come from the military. People like Tulsi Gabbard, people like Douglas McGregor, Scott Ritter, they're from the military. Whereas it's the activists, oh my God, feminism, they're the people that want, war. So there's been a flip. And part of it is because the divisions within the ruling class, and that's, and part of it is just, the way things have developed. That basically, during the Cold War, the way the USA was able to win the Cold War is after the USA was defeated in Vietnam, Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger oriented U.S. foreign policy to focus on trying to beat the communists at what they did best, right? Rather than just crush the commies with military force. Instead, we will pay off and manipulate communist groups. We'll find anti-imperialist forces of our own, and we'll support them and manipulate them and boost them with support. We'll give funding to college professors. And that, at the time the Soviet Union fell, the global communist movement was so confused and distant from the Soviet Union. They didn't have allies. The communist governments in Romania and Poland and China especially, and that had cut their ties and moved away from the Soviet Union, were tied in with the Western economy. Global anti-imperialist movements like Arab nationalism and Shia Islam were divided and fighting each other. And that rather than fighting the communists head on, which is what the USA did at the beginning of the Cold War, massive destruction in Korea, brutal coup in Indonesia that killed 500,000 people, the Vietnam War, etc. Instead, the USA focused on playing a soft power game and trying to manipulate the civil society that was the base of communist support, right? And that was how the USA was able to win the Cold War. And now, but Russia and China still have strong militaries, and all the communist governments that remain in power, including North Korea, Vietnam, and they have to have huge, strong militaries in order to stay in power. So they're very good at the military stuff. Whereas the civil society institutions at this point, now the Western imperialists have the upper hand in terms of civil society. So there's been kind of a flip. That's kind of what's going on. But I'm publishing a lot of different short pieces. I have the big books that I've written, but this is Divisions in the Ruling Class, right? Where I talk about this very issue. And the more conservative side of the ruling class is the one that is less war oriented, because the regime change apparatus presents in a liberal civil society way. And the military industrial complex is tied in with lower levels of capital that are not as invested in globalism, in the financial apparatus. It's the upper levels of capital that are tied in with intelligence. That during the Vietnam War era, it was the military industrial complex that was more hawkish, and it was the upper levels, the Eastern establishment, Riverside Church, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts. They were the ones that were more in favor of de-escalation and negotiation. Now that's flipped. Now it's the military that wants to de-escalate and negotiate, and it is this global civil society regime change, color revolution apparatus that is tied in with the upper levels of capital. That's the difference. That's the difference. And this analysis you will not get anywhere else, mind you. This analysis is purely from the Center for Political Innovation. No one else can even hold a candle to us. You saw me debating Destiny earlier. We have amazing, brilliant people in our group. Watch, our member Noah was just on Iranian state TV breaking down the tariffs on China and where they're coming from and why they're not working. Brilliant stuff. Peter Coffin is our member, and he does amazing analysis of social media and the J.K. Rowling effect and manipulation. He's brilliant in many, many ways. And I mean, we've just got amazing people in our organization. Penny is out there on the streets every day, meeting with people and building relationships. And she confronted Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and was demonstrating in support of Ibrahim Raisi. There's just so many amazing people in our group, right? I mean, I think Briggy was just at Bernie Sanders events, handing out our literature and engaging with the Bernie supporters about, do you believe in economic growth? And if I just start naming people off, John has done so much to support Uhuru, and we have such an amazing relationship with the Uhuru movement, a relationship of solidarity. There's just so many amazing people in the Center for Political Innovation doing so much amazing work. I don't want to forget anybody, but it's like we have a dynamic group. One of our members was in Kentucky, just debated. They're about to have a NATO summit in Dayton, Ohio, and so they had a debate at a public library about NATO. And so one of our members, who is an activist in Kentucky, He was there and he debated the pro-NATO people and wiped the floor with them. I can't wait to show you the video of that. It's just utterly amazing what our member in Kentucky was able to do. A founder of the Kentucky Party. We have great brains and great organizers in CPI. You should join CPI and get in on the action. And if there's anything you do, you got to come to our convention. Our convention that is coming up is going to be the biggest event that we have ever done. This is going to be amazing. We need you at that event. And I want to thank everyone who's given contributions to help make that event happen. There was a big contribution that came in yesterday. Very much appreciated. But it's not enough, right? If we're going to do this event as we want to do it with the 7-day program, with the post-convention event of our members, we need more support. So if you can give a contribution, that would be appreciated. If you can go now to the GoFundMe and give a contribution to support our upcoming event in Chicago, give us $5, $10, or $300, or $1,000, or $20, or whatever you can do. That would be great. A little bit goes a long way, especially if a lot of you do it. So I'm going to show this video, then we'll resume answering questions. This is just about what we've got planned for Chicago in July. It's going to be awesome. Friends, how you doing today? I'm letting you know, the Center for Political Innovation, we are about to do, on July 12th, the biggest event that we have ever done. It will be our national gathering in Chicago on July 12th. And it's going to be really, really special. We are talking with a number of important anti-imperialist voices, a lot of different communities. There's going to be musical performances, dance performances. There's going to be great speeches, and it's going to be a whole day gathering dedicated to anti-imperialism. I am committed, and CPI has always been committed to building an in real life network of people. And we carry out real operations. We were at the inauguration of Trump with our Trump and Kim banner saying only peace can make America great again. We were on the streets of Chicago at the Democratic National Convention with a book exposing what Kamala Harris and who she really is and what she's really about, and it was really, really important. We have 1,000 copies of our book about the Houthis that are being distributed with the poster of the convention on the back to people who would never go looking for this. We are putting door hanger flyers on doors of people, again, that would never go looking for this. We're not performing and trying to make ourselves feel good. We're actually trying to build a network of people that can be anti-imperialists in America. And it's not easy to do. It's very difficult in these times to build a real in-life organization. People have their issues. We live in a very strange time, but we have to do it. And we are committed to continuing this project. This video is basically me telling you we need your support. In order to pull off our convention that includes our 7-day program for our members around the country to come to Chicago, includes our huge convention on July 12th, where we're gonna fill up the Midwest Convention Center, in order to have an effective national planning meeting and gathering in Chicago the day after on July 13th. In order to do what we need to do, we need to fill up that auditorium and we need money. And there's really no way around that. We need you to donate to the Center for Political Innovation. We have set up a GoFundMe, and a lot of people have already contributed. We already raised a couple $1,000, but it's not enough. In order to really pull off our July activities and really have a win for anti-imperialism, we need your support. We need you to go to the GoFundMe right now and donate $5 or $20. We need you to go to the donate button on the CPI website and send us $100 or $50, whatever you can do. If we're gonna do what we need to do in July and build the organization and have the mega anti-imperialist rally that needs to happen on July 12th and solidify the network that we're building to continue to carry out the great operations that we do, we need you to help us out. Every cent that we raise goes into building this group. I'm lucky I have a paycheck with everything that's going on. I'm surviving, and I have consistently put a huge amount of the money that I have, my own resources, my own funds, into CPI because I believe in it, because it needs to happen, because this organization is necessary. I'm looking at what I've got and my own resources and my own bills and all of that, and I'm looking at what's already been paid for, And it's not enough. I mean, it's just not enough. I can't just pay for everything myself. We have membership dues and other things, but we need a special gift. We need a special gift to make July happen. We need you to give us a special contribution so that we can make sure the July events go smoothly, that the housing for the people coming in out of town is covered, that the speakers that are being flown in, their airfare is properly covered. We need you to make a special one-time gift to make this July gathering, this anti-imperialist summit that we are organizing. We need you to help us make it happen and help us make it a success. Small gift, big gift, whatever you can do. We need you to help us with it. But you know what? I'll just say this. If it's a matter of send us a gift or come, we'd rather you come. We'd rather you be there. It's much more important that you be there on July 12th. If you can't afford to give us a gift, but you can afford to come to town, if there's one event that you come to this year, make it July 12th. CPI, Center for Political Innovation, we're doing something that nobody else is doing, and we're doing it right. We're not doing it in a way that we're trying to win the internet. We're not doing it in a way that we're trying to make ourselves feel special or act like we're cool. We're building what needs to be built. We are building the real connections. And if you can understand why what we're doing is so important, if you can understand why anti-imperialism is the future, but we have to break out of the narrow niche circles and internet culture and get to the masses of people with real outreach. If you can understand that, please give us a gift. We're trying to build an actual movement to win new people to anti-imperialism and continue to carry out operations to change the conversation in America so that we have a country where there's a mass movement demanding justice for working families and an end to these wars, that we're saying no to World War III, we're saying no to the emerging low-wage police state. That's what we urgently need. So if you can help us in any way, send us a gift. If you can be there on July 12th, be there. This is the biggest endeavor CPI has ever done, and it's going to lead to even bigger things. We don't back down. We don't go away. If we were going to back down, we would have done it a long time ago. And if we were one of their plants or one of these fake anti-imperialists, they would be making it a lot easier for us. We have been facing a lot of challenges, but we continue to achieve great victories. So we need your support. Please send us a contribution. Please be there on July 12th at the Midwest Convention Center in the Chicago area. It's right near the O'Hare Airport. It's going to be awesome. We need you there. Thank you. There we go. So if you can give us a gift, that would be tremendous. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm trying to spread the fire to everybody I can. We're on a mission. We got stuff we got to do. Yeah, we do have a few more questions to get to. Leo Messi asked, another question along the same lines of what I just answered. Then Tram Border said, have you seen any movies of Soviet director Andrei Tarkovsky, Solaris, Stalker, etc.? I'd enjoy analysis if you have. I have actually not. Solaris is very famous, and I think they did a remake of it with Kevin Spacey, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Kevin Spacey or George Clooney? But I have not seen those films, and I can't comment on them. I do enjoy Soviet cinema. Sergei Eisenstein is probably the most famous Soviet filmmaker. If you watch the films of Sergei Eisenstein, you watch Battleship Potemkin, which is the most famous film he made. That's, got the famous, the baby carriage rolling down the stroller. Or the baby carriage rolling down the staircase is famous. And then they've got 19 October is a movie he made about the Russian Revolution, which footage from it often gets used in like news, like it's actual footage of the Russian Revolution, but it's from the movie October. And then he made a movie called Ivan the Terrible, which was made during World War II, that is actually a very religious film. It's very Christian, and it's got Russian Orthodox prayers, and it's got a lot of religious imagery that shows you that the Soviet Union had become a quite religious place. You know, I was talking to somebody today, you know, no other leader in Soviet history has built more churches than Stalin. All right. Stalin, after World War II, he built churches all over the Soviet Union. And that there are many people in Russia who do believe that Stalin was a Christian. Now, that doesn't match. Historians say that's not true. The official Russian Orthodox Church says that's not true, but it's widely believed. And that's a point, you know, my Khrushchevism book, which we finished reading last night, that's a point that I make, is that the belief that Stalin was a Christian and the images of Stalin as an Orthodox icon that are all over the former Soviet Union, there's a reason for that, right? And it speaks to kind of the weirdness of American politics. I have this image in my book. All over the former Soviet Union, there are people who believe that Stalin was a Christian, and that he brought back the Russian Orthodox Church. He had faith. You know, he grew up and went to seminary school. He was from Georgia, and that, you know, it is widely believed in Russia that Stalin was a Christian, which doesn't make sense. But there you go. There you go. And that speaks to, you know, there's deeper things about it. But yeah, I wish I could give you more information on Soviet cinema. I don't have an answer to that. John McCarthy writes correctly that Lenin warned the European Union would strengthen imperialism. And that is true. That is absolutely true. In fact, that was one of the prime differences between Lenin and Trotsky. Is that Trotsky didn't join the Bolsheviks until July of 1917, right before the Russian Revolution. And Trotsky, he said that he spent a lot of his life as a revolutionary going around trying to promote what he called the United States of Europe, the USE, right? And he said that would advance the class struggle because it would break down the national barriers between workers in Europe. Lenin vehemently disagreed with that. And if you read Lenin's very important essay, Imperialism and the Split in Socialism, which I think is really, it's one of the most important works, right? And I really, you know, it's only 10 pages long, and it's an essay that Lenin wrote where he explains what imperialism is. He gives the definition of imperialism, and he explains why the socialist movement has largely sold out and supported World War I. 10 pages, but it has a vehement critique of Trotsky for supporting the European Union, for calling for a United States of Europe. And he says, we don't want a United States of Europe because that'll strengthen imperialism. And they'll be able to further oppress the people in the colonized world. We want to emphasize disagreements between the imperialist countries. We don't want to strengthen the European Union. And Lenin writes this very powerful essay with very bold language, basically saying that the fight in the world today is against this imperialist system. It's not just against regular capitalism. And that if it wasn't for fake socialists, who are an essential part of imperialism, you can't have imperialism without social democrats, without reformist labor leaders. You can't have imperialism without them. And if it wasn't for them, imperialism would fall apart. And then he ends the essay. I always quote this because it's one of my most favorite quotes because it really gets to the essence, right? He says, neither we nor anyone else can calculate precisely what portion of the proletariat is following and will follow social chauvinists and opportunists. This will be revealed only by the struggle, and it will be definitely decided only by the socialist revolution. But we know for certain that the defenders of the fatherland in imperialist war represent only a minority. And it is therefore our duty, if we wish to remain socialists, to go lower and deeper to the real masses. This is the whole meaning of the struggle against opportunism. And he says, by exposing the fact that the opportunists and social chauvinists are in reality betraying and selling the interests of the workers, They are defending the temporary privileges of a minority of workers, and they are vehicles of bourgeois ideas and influence, that they are allies and agents of the bourgeoisie. We teach the masses to appreciate their true political interests, to fight for socialism and for revolution through all the painful vicissitudes of imperialist war and imperialist alliances. The only Marxist line in the labor movement is to explain to the masses the inevitability and necessity of breaking with opportunism, and to educate them for revolution by waging relentless struggle against opportunism, and to utilize the experience of war to expose, not conceal, the utter vileness of national labor politics. It is not our job to kiss ass of AOC. It is not our job to fit in with the socialists and communists. It is our job to go lower and deeper to the real masses and build a movement that is against the fake socialists, right? Is against them, right? That's who we should be aiming for. It's not about the movement. It's about the masses. It's about getting to the masses of people and opposing the war machine, the imperialist war machine, the imperialist globalist apparatus. And if fake socialists are part of that system, we want nothing to do with them. We want to go past them, lower and deeper to the real masses, out of the movement to the masses. That is what Lenin was saying. Now, Red Maze, he sent a very nice, Rumble super chat on the Cash App. And he said, thank you, $10 for a nice own of the megalib. Yeah, Destiny's obnoxious. But, I got to speak to a lot of people. It's worth sometimes using a platform if you can get it to speak to people. But the main point is about building an organization. That is what we aim to do, is to build an organization, right? And that is the goal. We are building an organization. We're not building a social media brand. We're not trying to be internet famous. We're trying to build a real organization, lower and deeper to the real masses. Now, I will probably stream tomorrow night, and I will probably stream on Wednesday. But then Thursday, I'm headed out of town. While I'm out of town, I am going to be premiering videos on this channel of CPI activities. Long videos will be premiering, kind of like what I used to do on Sundays. And I'm going to do that when I'm out of town in June as well. That'll be kind of the way that we present, is we have long videos with all kinds of images of different things that CPI has done, showing what we've done. So that's what I'm working on now, is getting done some of those long videos for while I'm away. Today, the slideshow on the history of communism in New York City premiered on this channel. Tomorrow, the slideshow of living as an innovationist will premiere on this channel. Wednesday, the full audiobook of Khrushchevism, a study in psychological warfare, is going to premiere on this channel. We're trying to keep this channel active, keep it going. But yeah, we appreciate, everything. This event, though, my heart is on July. My heart is on July. We've got to have an effective moment in July. So if you can support us on the GoFundMe, if you can be in July, be there. We need you there. So yeah, that's what we're doing. So dare to struggle, dare to win, everybody. Thank you for all your support. We're building a really beautiful community. Anyone who's around us, Gabriella was just talking about the fire, the energy that we have. We have something really, really special. We have something really, really special, and you need to be part of it, right? You need to get some of that energy to come your way, because there's something here that can't be explained. We have something here, and we would like to pass it on to you, and we would like to make it contagious, and we'd like it to go everywhere, and we'd like to build a new world of peace and innovation. Dare to struggle, dare to win. So yeah, we're not doing a big mega stream tonight, 3 hours. We're wrapping up pretty quickly, which is fine, right? We can't go long every night, which is fine. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be joined by Dan. We got the LA workshop coming up on Sunday. So if you are in LA, it's on Saturday. If you're in LA, come and join the workshop. Tomorrow night, Dan is going to come on and talk about the workshop with me. That's going to be awesome. Dan's a great guy. So yeah, everyone, see you in Los Angeles. See you in Chicago. Dare to struggle, dare to win. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.